and in theory, plotting a coup according to the Turkish constitution, meaning being prepared to intervene against a religious takeover of the government, would actually be legal, especially if it wasn't acted on. It's Plan X. Not only were these officers thrown in prison, but they were stripped of their patrimony. They lost custody of their children, which has never occurred in the history of Turkey. It is such a bizarre concept. They were stripped of the rights to their own children. And this is a man that we're in bed with. Additionally, of the 4 we have admitted were killed in the attack in Benghazi, because there are rumors that more Americans were killed, 2 of these diplomats were Navy SEALs. The Libyans we have put in power were shocked by how many CIA agents scuttled out of their holes in Benghazi, as the airport in Benghazi was clogged with American CIA agents and contractors trying to get out of town after this amazingly powerful assault of 150 trained, effectively right-wing religious commandos that not only took out the embassy, but went after the safe houses. When will we Westerners put in power wise and peaceful rulers, like Ashok or Suleiman or Winston Churchill? Churchill was horrified at small countries being liberated by modern, grim-faced iron armies of Italy, Germany, Japan, and the Soviet Union. I read every word he has written on World War II, every speech he has uttered, and I'm nearly certain he would view this similarly to the fate of King Zog of Albania, who was liberated from the misery of independent existence by Mussolini, or the people of the Czechoslovak Republic, or the ancient kingdom of Abyssinia. You should listen to his speech, A Hush Over Europe, and see whether Mr. David Cameron, who went on Time, the cover of Time, and said, "I'm David Cameron, and I love Winston Churchill." And I'm not going to call David Cameron names, but I would very much be impelled to do so. Who has suffered in Libya? Women's rights have suffered. Libya had full equal rights for women. Blacks' rights have suffered. Blacks were massively lynched in false rumors, probably spread by our own intelligence services. Certainly our press encouraged completely unsubstantiated claims. I watched every article come out painfully day after day. Anything said against Gaddafi was gleefully reprinted. Anything said to question him was squelched. But they did leak out. 100 articles came out. 90 of them were very loosely researched, all from 2 or 3 sources, all supporting the invasion. We've been fooled again and again and again. How many times can we be fooled? In Vietnam, we were fooled. In Iraq, we were fooled. Afghanistan is a complicated situation, but anybody could have predicted this. I worked with 2 Pakistani research engineers, and they laughed at the idea of the U.S. thinking they could occupy Afghanistan. No one has ever occupied Afghanistan except one Sikh king once, who was able to rule it peacefully in the 1500s because of his justice and wisdom. And not only blacks and women's and religious minorities' rights, the Sufis, but history itself is under attack in Libya. We have armed people who are burning historical sites. The Saudis are pressuring them to destroy Sufi shrines. Libraries of ancient Islamic and Arabic documents have been deliberately burned. And we are writing a history of our intervention, which is false. So history is under attack in Libya. I wrote and recorded many pieces in the spring and summer of last year about the false media narratives. And now the neocon Republicans themselves talk of a White House narrative. The precise words that I used a year and a half ago, this White House narrative. But they heartily cheered for this false story. And the White House narrative that they're attacking is simply political manipulation. There's no difference between the Republican and Obama administration positions on Libya. Obama got caught with this terrible incident, and now it's being made hay with. Now, there is an issue of competency here, certainly. Now, when I attack the neocons, I do deeply respect true small government conservative Republicans in honor of my meticulous grandfather, who believed in the Constitution and hard money and minding our own business, and was not taken seriously by my own liberal father and uncles and aunts. Yet now a nation hearkens to that precise call under the banner of Ron Paul. I wish my grandfather could have seen Ron Paul, but I don't think he would have liked to see what's happened to our country in the last 30 years. The people we installed in Libya now are attacking the strongest resistant point in Libya to the overthrow of their previous government, the Warfala capital of Beni Walid. And there is evidence, though not yet confirmed, that chemical weapons are being used on them. These are our people we put in power, and they apparently are using chemical weapons, and some civilians have come in with trembling nerves and odd-looking scars and burns to the hospital in Beni Walid. The city is under siege, so the hospital struggling mightily. These people have courage. They are facing 10 to 100 times the military forces, and they are not giving up. The Warfala tribe, with Beni Walid being their capital, is 1/6 of all Libyans. Libyans today that I've debated with claim that tribal allegiances are not the primary factor any longer, but the rape and pillage of Beni Walid, its suppression, and the going after the people and punishing them collectively for supporting the previous government will outrage many Warfala who may indeed have not considered tribe their primary allegiance, but it will certainly boil their blood now. Many of these people would have preferred to, regardless of the history behind it, to try to work to bring Libya out of its ashes into a brighter future. But this attack on Beni Walid could easily drive people to greater division. I wish all Libyans, regardless of their attitude towards the NATO invasion, for make no mistake, this was not a civil war. It was an insurrection that was exploited to annihilate Libya's defenses and install a pro-Western state in its place. Obama's wretched continuation of murder and plunder of Arabs and Muslims and their lands will no doubt be even worse under Romney. After destabilizing, assassinating, and funding right-wing death squads in nascent democracies in Iran, the Congo, Chile, Guatemala, Honduras, Argentina, Brazil, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Afghanistan, abandoning our Pakistani allies after demolishing a secular communist government in Afghanistan, arming and training Osama bin Laden, we do the same now in Libya and in Syria. And Romney writes a book called America, No Apologies. Romney should read a few books written about America's intervention in developing countries in the last 50 years. He's practically called Palestinian subhuman, saying they had an inferior culture to the Israelis. And Obama has allowed serious war crimes that may lead to the deaths of 1 million people in Saharan Africa to occur by his administration, because the destabilization of Libya is creating a very serious refugee situation. It's just like what happened in Iraq. In Iraq, people say nearly 1 million people died in Iraq. You'd think they died under one of the Bushes. They actually died under Clinton, because under the embargo, after the destruction of the infrastructure, there was no potable water. And there was no electricity. We destroyed their power plants. We destroyed their water purification facilities. And then we embargoed them so they couldn't sell oil. And Iraq has $40 trillion worth of oil. And a major in the Indian Army I spoke to said he had talked to Americans who had been in Iraq, and they were sending out ship after ship after ship of oil. They were paying what they paid $50 for, they were selling at $400. Normally, the commission on Western companies selling oil is 10%. We're talking a commission of 80% if what this Indian major told me is true. So Obama's allowed serious war crimes that could lead to the deaths of 1 million people in Saharan Africa to occur by his administration. But apparently, Romney would be far worse at carelessly shattering nations with war rather than diplomacy. We did not use our diplomats for diplomacy. We used them as liaisons in war and covert operations. Now we have no diplomats. I do not know whether Chris Stevens is a good person or part of this arrogance. In either case, he paid the ultimate price. One thing I'm certain of, though, is that if we had had an enlightened diplomatic policy and State Department, he would have worked just as tirelessly for the real good of America and Africa, rather than overseeing a catastrophic bungling. just the latest in a string that have plagued us, particularly since the ominous rise of what Eisenhower warned us of, the military-industrial complex. Although he allowed several near genocides to occur by supporting the installation of right-wing military dictatorships in the name of fighting communism. Let us not twist Eisenhower into a prophet. A prophet he was, but he helped let the genie out of the bottle, the genie of a corporate murder industry, an America gone mad. For the average American, let us be clear, there are major consequences for you. A huge prison industry has emerged in this country, never before seen in the history of the world, other than in communist China and the Soviet Union. We have the highest incarceration rate in the world. A quarter of the world's prisoners are in the United States, when we have 6% of the world's population. That money could be spent on reindustrializing our country, or research and development and poverty eradication. The same goes for our grotesquely bloated banking and military industries. Imagine if this money was spent on reindustrializing and research and development and poverty eradication and schooling and so forth, instead of on these wasteful, mind-boggling thefts of money. Because you, the taxpayer, must spend trillions of dollars propping all this up. But the many companies involved, Halliburton, the oil companies, Boeing, Raytheon, General Dynamics, the banks, the consultants, Bechtel, they all profit. You pay $4 trillion and they bank $4 trillion. It's a direct theft, and it involves the murder of hundreds of thousands of people, the destruction of history, the scarring of societies. America hasn't seen anything like this since the Civil War. I haven't studied the psyche of Americans after the Civil War, but I know that the psyche of these nations, you see, at least in the Civil War, the major powers didn't really intervene, luckily for us. In these cases, there's a sense of powerlessness for these people because it's the major powers that come in and call the shots. You pay for these wars that have doubled our debt and weakened our economy and our standing in the world, unless you believe murder and fear imposed on other nations is respect. It is not respect. And eventually the E7, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, Indonesia, Turkey, Mexico, and others right behind them, will turn on your grandchildren and extract a heavy price. Oh, Obama, Obama, Obama. Were you forced into these decisions by powers you lacked the guts to confront, the national security apparatus and its corporate beneficiaries and neocon political operatives? Or were you misled? Do you understand now how grievous your mistakes were? Did you realize hiring the lawyer Hillary Clinton to run our State Department? I mean, when you read the history of Britain and Churchill, the idea of hiring someone who's a lawyer and well, it happened. But normally you have your State Department run by somebody who has a lot of experience in diplomacy. So you hired Hillary Clinton to run your State Department, thinking that you were following some Lincoln maneuver. And now we've put two people into power who thought they were geniuses into positions that they have displayed a stunning lack of vision and capability in. I weep for our country. As David Bowie's song in the movie The Falcon and the Snowman says, this is not America. This is not America. Little piece of me.